This is a Florida Chapter CRS Diversity First Time Live event. We're going to be streaming and videoing for YouTube. I would ask...
That's a lot of hard work here.
That's our chapter president, Sandra Fernandez.
Yay!
If you saw me with the orange buckets, we are going to ask you, if you choose, to give whatever you can in that donation box. Whatever you give will be split between the Wounded Warriors Program and the Coalition of Independent Living.
Take out your wallet.
Now, our first speaker today is Christine Rudd. Am I pronouncing that right, Rudd? Okay. She is a disability advocate, speaker, author, and consultant. Mrs. Rudd holds a bachelor's degree in legal studies and a master's degree in criminal justice, both from the University of Central Florida. Her interests include parenting with a disability, disabled victims of crime, IEP issues, and the ADA. She authors a diversity-related blog, which she, I'm sure, will tell you what that is. And she is originally from Brooklyn, New York, and moved to Orlando in 1996. Please welcome Christine Rudd.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ooh, I have to kind of put my chin down to get hurt. Okay, so good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here with you today. And I'm going to feel a little bit weird. Oh, yeah. That might be a little bit better. Okay, is that better? Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm really so happy to be with you here today. And I'm actually going to give Brandy a little plug. If you can help the Wounded Warriors or the Coalition for Independent Options, you know, I used to work for the local CIL, and I know that they do great things for people, and they run on such a shoestring budget that if you can help them, they do really do a lot. So, yeah, no problem. I'm so happy to be here with you today, and I'm gonna start by. Go ahead and click my little. Life is not a journey. Life is not a journey. It's a destination. But today I'm going to talk to you about my journey, kind of to home ownership, because some of you saw me walk in with my son. Yeah, I'm a homeowner. Kind of unbelievable to believe, and I happen to have a disability. But you kind of heard a little bit about me, so I kind of break the mold in a couple of different things. Go ahead. So I would like you to allow me to take you on the journey from when I was a child to actually becoming an adult homeowner, okay? And I'm going to talk to you about the obstacles that I faced as a child that made me a little bit more aware of what I needed as a homeowner, as an adult. Like I said, I've worked for a Center for Independent Living, so I'm kind of familiar, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that too, about the familiarity of the home modifications and what that does for people. But that's kind of the journey I would like to take you on today, so you can see a different perspective, okay, on somebody else's trip through life and gaining a home. Go ahead. Okay, owning your own home is really part of the American dream. We all know that. But what happens is that a lot of people, like I said before, they're unable to own homes because of one reason or another. When they have a disability, it makes it more difficult for them. But this is going to be a story a little bit more about the American dream. It's going to be a little story about an American dream for someone who has a disability, okay? Okay, so home ownership does a lot of different things for people with disabilities, okay? It's going to give them a sense of independence that they would never have had before, okay? And it's a very, as we all know, you're in here, you do the job. You know it's a difficult goal to attain for a lot of people who aren't disabled. So sometimes it's a little bit more difficult for people who are disabled just because of some extra things that they have to go through and extra hurdles that they might have to overcome. Go ahead. Home ownership is going to be an investment, as all of you know, but it just helps your self-esteem so much more to know, yes, I have a disability, I have other obstacles that I have to overcome in life, but here I am, I'm a homeowner, and and I have invested in my future just by being able to buy this home. Okay, and there's nothing like being able to say that you're a homeowner. It's like one of the greatest things, because when you lay your head down, whether the economy is bad or not, because we know sometimes the economy is great and the market is great, and sometimes the economy is not that good, and it's difficult for you guys out there that are actually trying to sell the homes. It's very difficult for you. But no matter what, there's that investment that we have as a person with a disability. Okay, for the most part, there are basically two barriers that I could think of. I'm sure there might be some more for someone else in a different perspective, but there are two barriers to home ownership for people with disabilities, for the most part, give or take. Okay, one of them is economic barriers. I was actually thinking about down payment assistance, because sometimes when you have a disability, you're only allowed to accrue so much money. If I only get SSI, like I did before I started working, I would have only been able to have a $2,000 limit on my savings account before somebody is going to come from Social Security, knock on my door, and say, now you owe us some of that money back. Or they're going to cut my Medicaid and limit, not even really limit, but take away my medical, which I need so badly for my medical expenses, just for that $2,000. And I know that when I bought my home, I needed to have $10,000 just for my closing costs. So, you know, I'm very lucky, I'm very blessed. But those are the two barriers that people are going to face. And accessibility, I was thinking about it the other day. Accessibility is something that it's very easy for people who don't have a disability. But when you have a disability, accessibility is something taken for granted. When I worked at the Center for Independent Living, we worked with a lot of people who needed ramps because they couldn't get out of their homes. And I would get on the phone with them, and I understood, because in a minute I'm going to tell you about how I used to be in a wheelchair. So I understand what it's like not to be able to get out, be in winter and be in snow, but you know, to be able to get out of the home and to go to the grocery store, not only does it make me feel good when I go make that purchase at Publix or wherever I go, I'm stimulating the economy with my money, number one, and then number two, I'm having that interaction with someone else, maybe with Brandy, maybe she works at my Publix, or maybe somebody else, and those type of interactions actually improve the quality of life of somebody with a disability, okay? So it's really, it's a lot more important than some people realize. Okay, and then I was thinking, go ahead, Brandy, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead and go. Okay, thanks. Okay, some of the accessibility modifications that can be done, I don't know how many of you are familiar, but they can build ramps, they can widen doors for individuals who can't get in the door because their wheelchair is wider than the normal width of a door, okay? They can go ahead and install grab bars at toilets or at showers or at bathtubs. They can lower door handles. Go ahead, Brandy, after that one, please, I'm sorry. Okay? They can actually lower kitchen cabinets, okay? And bathroom cabinets, you can actually get them lower, or lower the doorknob handle so that somebody who's sitting in a chair doesn't have to try to reach up. They can actually just open that door on their own. I mean, little things that people maybe don't think about are so big to people who live with disabilities. Okay, now, go ahead, Brandy. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about myself. Click that one more time.
That's it.
Okay. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about myself, my journey, like I said before, okay, of being a person with a disability in a chair, because I was never supposed to walk. I was supposed to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, and obviously now I'm not. But how I was able to overcome the barriers and become a homeowner. And I'm lucky because my home is accessible to me, and I didn't have to do too many modifications to get that home accessibility. I was very, very lucky. It was like the luck of the draw, really. But that's what I'm going to talk to you about. I know Brandy's laughing because I told her the story about that. But I was born with cerebral palsy, okay? And we lived actually in New York. Go ahead. Go on, Brandy. We lived in a 2-story home in New York, okay? And I remember, and I have to tell you, that when I lived in New York, one of the things that I had to do was get to and from school and down the stairs. Go ahead, Brandon. Because you see that? That's my house. And they had to get me down those stairs in my wheelchair. Now that's a snowstorm, obviously, but even getting down the stairs with my wheelchair every day just to get to the front gate to meet the bus was an obstacle. And God bless my grandmother, she was 50 years old. She had me in her house, and she and my grandfather would get me down those stairs every day. So that was one of the obstacles that I had to face from when I was a little girl. Okay, I'm going to leave that there just for entertainment for some of you, because that's hysterical. The other obstacle that I had when I was a little girl was I could not, go ahead, go forward. Every morning, like I said, I would have to meet the bus. Go ahead. The picture threw me off. But bath time was another problem. I don't have a picture of it, but just for me to get a bath, I had to be taken in and out of the bathtub, even though my grandfather installed grab bars around the bathtub for me. I remember the tub, it's still there. It was very difficult for me to try to get into even when I could walk. And so bath time was not that simple for me, but they really tried to make the home as accessible as possible for me. So bath time was just, I ended up having to be picked up and out and down and up and down. And then getting up and down the stairs just to go ahead. Okay. Yeah, just to go to bed or to get up in the morning was kind of funny because I didn't tell you, I didn't walk until I was about 6 years old, okay? But when I would go up the stairs, by the time I was 7, I could hold onto the rail and get myself up the stairs. And I would kind of go sideways up the stairs every morning, you know, when I have to go back upstairs. But coming down the stairs, I would have to sit on the top step and push myself down each step, okay? That worked. That worked pretty well, except one time, I remember, just before I got to the bottom step, I actually heard a crack in my neck, and I ended up spraining my neck. Go ahead and show the neck. There I am. I had a sprained neck from trying to get down the stairs. Thank you. But I did. I got a sprained neck from just trying to get down the stairs. So the other, as you saw the lovely snow before. Go ahead, Brandon. The snow causes more issues of accessibility. It's kind of why I'm from Brooklyn, but now I'm here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that too, but the snow causes a lot of accessibility issues. And we lived in New Jersey when I went to high school, and when we lived there, it was so difficult for me to get out of our apartment because it wasn't as bad as the house that I just showed you, but it was the same kind of steps. And so to get out of the house when there was a snowstorm, the top one would ice up. And I particularly remember a time where a friend of mine came after a snowstorm, and she said, let's go to the mall. And they had to try to carry me. They carried me down the steps. I was like 16 or 17 years old. I had to get carried down the steps just to get to the car. And with all of that, I still decided I was going to try to go to school. In New Jersey, I decided I was going to go to school. Go ahead and get the next one, Brandy, please. I tried to go to school. Well, I picked the college I must have with the most hills in the state of New Jersey, first of all. And that would have been okay, except when a big snowstorm hit, they never cleaned. So I was actually a prisoner of my dorm room because the college, they were a little college and they would never go around with any sort of cleaning mechanisms. I was a prisoner of my dorm room for the first year and a half. And so the one time that they did end up cleaning, I got to go outside and try to go, and it was actually to try to go get something to eat because they wouldn't have food available for us until dinner time. So sometimes I'd be trapped in there until dinner time without being able to get something to eat. But luckily we had refrigerators and things, but I mean a Pop-Tart compared to something else to eat, I mean, I guess that's what you had to eat. But so I got out finally, once they supposedly had cleaned, but I ended up falling on a piece of ice in the middle of the street. And so I had decided it was Florida, here I come, because I was tired of the weather. I love my family, but I was tired. So once I got to Florida, though, it was kind of interesting because it was great. The weather's different. I got an apartment. I lived by myself. And at that time, I kind of found a way to get in and out of the bathtub, even though the bathtub didn't have any grab bars. And later on, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about as I continue, later on I found out that really, for a person with a disability who lives in an apartment, it's not that easy to get any sort of modifications. I learned that working at the Center for Independent Living, because apartments and modifications, even grab bars, are really non-existent here in this area. But so anyway, I lived in my apartment, and that was great, except that they decided to move where the mailboxes were, because they were having a rash of robberies in people's mailboxes, in the lock mailbox. I don't even know how they did that. But so anyway, when they moved the mailbox, that was a whole nother thing for me. I think I started getting my advocacy chops then, because I actually had to start advocating, because the mailboxes were put in where the laundry room was. Luckily, I had my own washer and dryer, so I didn't have to go to the laundry room. But when I ended up having to go there, I couldn't get even into the laundry room. So I spent many months advocating. Actually, I'm going to give a plug. The Advocacy Center was a big, this is not a joke, was a big help to me. And they actually advocated. I'm actually only the second person in the state of Florida to have what's called door delivery. That's where the postal office came and installed a mailbox in front of my house, in front of my door in my apartment. And the mailman had to bring my mail to that mailbox every single day. They did that for about 8 years, for the rest of the time that I lived there. So that was one of my first tests as an advocate. But to me, that was accessibility, was living on my own and being able to go get my mail, because I don't need somebody coming to my house, looking through my mail, maybe taking a piece of mail. I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but really is the truth. So anyway, after all of that, I want to let you know too, because I'm sure you're going to come across many people, and I'm sure you probably have already, many people with many sort of disabilities. Every disability is different, even though it's the same. What do I mean by that? I mean, I have cerebral palsy and I can walk with my cane. But there are others with cerebral palsy who are not as well spoken as myself, because their cerebral palsy affected their speech, or they're in a wheelchair. I was very lucky. I had surgeries at a certain time. But some people don't have that either ability, or they don't have that resource available to them. Okay? So just as there are many different disabilities, within each disability, there's so many differences. Even working with people with multiple sclerosis is the same thing. I know people with multiple sclerosis who walk with a cane, but then I know people with multiple sclerosis that can't barely speak. And you're talking about diagnosis time is about the same. So with every disability, every person that's going to come to you needing a home is going to need something specific as far as their modifications are concerned. I don't need too many things, but the next person might need more. So I thought that was something interesting. When it was time for me to buy my home, I knew the things that I needed in order to make my home accessible for me. What did I need? Go ahead, Brandy, please. What did I need? I needed a house that didn't have landings, like more than one landing, extra steps that I couldn't get down. I didn't need all that. I needed a home that had one landing all throughout the home. I needed a home with easy access out of all the exits and entrances, because I didn't want to try and build, get a modification. Then I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. Okay. And I wanted to be able to have an accessible bathtub that I could get in and out of. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. So from my past work experiences, I knew how much these home modifications cost. They're in the thousands, okay? Ramps and home modifications, they're in the thousands. So I knew I didn't want to do that. My realtors, I was very lucky. My realtors were very sensitive to my needs, and they worked with me, and we looked for a long time before we found the home that was right for me. One home that I remember that we'd gone to see had landing changes in different weird places, like the master bedroom and the kitchen. And I couldn't buy that house. One of the reasons was because logistically you couldn't put grab bars in the places where I needed them to live independently in that house. So obviously I didn't buy that home. Go ahead. My house, you're going to see it in a minute, my house has a walk-in shower that I didn't put there. It has a bench that I didn't put there. And I can get up and down the front steps fairly easy, so. Go ahead, Brandy. And there's the bathroom. I didn't do that. When I saw that, I said, I'm buying this house. I don't know how I'm going to get it, but I'm buying this house. And I bought that house. Go ahead, Brandy. And see, and there's the front. And there's very little need for any sort of landing. Actually, when I was pregnant with my son, I was using a scooter, and we put a little ramp right at the front door so my husband could get the scooter up to the house, but really doesn't need any modifications. The only other thing that we're still working on is modifying the backyard because I have an enclosed porch area. But I want to say to you that in conclusion, buying a home is very tedious and stressful for anyone. When you have a disability, it takes a little bit of extra time to attain that goal with that client of yours. But with your client knowing what their needs are, and by you, the realtor, being sensitive to their needs, it's very possible for them to get the home of their dreams.